Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Weekly Collective, a business podcast for the rest of us. I'm your host, Nick. This episode is brought to you in part by Locology.com. Locology is a digital marketing agency with an emphasis on the science behind what they do. Everything they do is largely based around the tracking of data, analyzing, and finding solutions that ensure their clients get the best possible ROI that they can with their internet marketing. Locology is your one-stop shop for all things digital marketing, handling everything from website design and development itself to search engine optimization and pay-per-click campaigns. Based in the US, Locology has a firm understanding of what it takes to market your product or service effectively and can do so on a contract-free basis. Whether you're just getting started with your business or are an industry veteran looking to expand, Locology can get you where you need to be. Visit their website at locology.com and sign up within the month of July to receive 25% off your new website or website redesign. This episode is also brought to you by ThingLister. ThingLister is the fastest way to find things to do in your city tonight. Sign up for the beta today at ThingLister.com and check us out on Twitter at ThingLister. That's ThingLister.com. Unfortunately, our guest couldn't make it this episode, so I thought I would do the same thing I did in episode 4 and just kind of read over some questions that I either found on Reddit or were asked and answer them to the best of my ability. The first goes like this. All right, so next summer I'm starting a lawn care / home care service. What are some tips you can provide me? It goes on to explain, I'd be offering grass cutting and trimming, weeding, power washing, fertilizing, pet cleanup, and please share your tips to keep customers coming back and get the word out to others. Also, if you have any tips about the services I'd provide, he words it kind of strange, feel free to suggest any services I could easily add. I think the biggest tip, and I don't know if this is actually a decent answer or not, but he mentions, next summer I'm going to start this company. My biggest advice would be don't wait until next year. I don't know where you're from, so I don't know the climate, or you mentioned somewhere specifically, so you might be a student or something. I'm not exactly sure, but assuming you're not a student, and you're in a climate where seasons occur. I know there's places where it's near summer all year round. Jump right into it. Start pitching yourself as a snow removal service or something like that, a yard cleanup, general cleanup. He mentioned pet cleanup, but not yard exactly. Someone that'll rake leaves and things like that. You definitely don't have to wait. There could be a real good reason that you want to wait. Like I said, you might be a student or whatever, or maybe the snow thing's not applicable and there's nothing you can do there. I'm not sure. Lots of factors come in, but my overall goal, and you can dissect this however it fits to you specifically, is don't wait until next year. Don't give yourself some arbitrary number. It's an easy way to kind of cop out and justify it to yourself, whether you're meaning to or not. And, I'll do this when this happens, or, January 1st of next year, 2016, that's going to be when it really, really, really goes for me. And I can see some of the idea behind it, if you're legitimately doing it to, give yourself a point A and point B. I can see the appeal, but if you're in that mindset, you're in the wrong mindset already. If I'll even put it like this, if you are a student or if you travel or whatever the case, if you can only work on your business during the summer, and it kind of spawned another idea in my mind, or a potential roadblock. You'll have a hard time starting a company and telling people, I'm only available to work during these 3 months or whatever. Assuming that's not the case, though, assuming you're going to start next summer and that's when your business really goes full force, 100% for all year round. You've got a lot of time, actually. You've got a pretty decent benefit. Do any and all the work you can, as far as paperwork, I guess, goes before next summer comes around. Register your business, make sure everything's legal, save up any money you might need, to talk to a legal professional or someone that can really point you in the right direction. It's 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 a it's a nice thing to have all that time when starting a business, because you can plan accordingly. Lots of people will post or will mention, oh, I've been doing computer repair on the side, for friends and family, and I want to make it a business now. And you kind of have to look back and say, oh, well, technically I've had an income and I need to report this income and things like that. And it just gets messy and stressful because you've probably gone and spent your money and now you have to save twice as much for tax purposes and things like that. So to know ahead of time, or to have all that time to learn, you're going to have to pay this much in tax, set this aside, or, make sure you earn X amount or X amount over what what you need to survive, so you can set so-and-so aside for tax purposes. You can also really work out your branding. I found in a lot of projects, I don't know, I talked about this in a past episode, how I just kind of, if I get an idea, I just go for it at 100%. And I can have a business idea and have the business, quote unquote, functioning in a week or something like that. And with that, you're kind of rushing to do everything. You're really struggling to come up with a name, and you have to settle, I guess. And don't let this time, I don't know, don't let this time be too much of a cushion. Don't, if one of your tasks in this next year or whatever, 10 months, whatever it is to come up with a business name, don't look at it like, oh, well, I've got all this time. Let me, well, I'll do this a month from now or next week or whatever. Kind of full circle to my original point is, don't wait if you don't have to. But kind of just sit down and actually hammer out all these things. Even if I talked about this another episode ago, or several episodes ago, with the business plan thing. Write out a business plan for yourself. Get everything down. Spend a couple hours one night and write down every piece of information about your business. Write a little about us. Think of the company name. Do all the pricing, even if it's temporary. Even if you have no idea for I don't know what people are charging to cut lawns. An acre of land. I better do some research, whatever you'd call that, calling around other companies, figuring out what the average is. Write down some arbitrary number. Come up in your mind with a real quick, rough number. You don't have to stick with any of this, but I'll charge $50 for an acre or whatever it is, and just have it on paper. And from there, it's always in the back of your mind. You've written something down. You've made a rough tentative decision, instead of kind of sitting there with several dozen different things you have to figure out, name and pricing and things like that. Have it all down, arbitrary numbers, whatever, come up with them, and work through them for the next, I guess, you have the next 10 months, but try to solidify things as quickly as you can. And also doing that will kind of allow you to focus on details you wouldn't have considered. If I make the decision that, I'm going to start a lawn care company, and I've got all the money to invest in the equipment and things like that, and we're going to launch next month, then you're really rushing to do things. You're rushing to register, to come up with a name, reverse that order, but come up with pricing, get a dedicated phone number, get a website up. You're really, really rushing to do that. If you've got 10 months ahead of yourself and you manage to cram all that in a week, even if they're just rough drafts and things like that, you've got the next 9 months and 3 weeks, whatever it is, to really kind of hash out the minor details and things that you wouldn't have considered. If you've got 100% of the primary things out of the way, you can sit back and you might have the idea, I could get a slap-on magnet for my truck, with a business logo on it, or I can get some business cards from here, or uniforms. I've got 9 more months to come up with a few dollars to get to have some professionally designed and created uniforms, whatever it might be. I'm rambling at this point, but my point overall is, don't wait if you don't have to. Whether that means you can actually start working now or not, that's for you to decide. But if in this hypothetical scenario you have a whole year to plan, get started right now. Start building your brand. people might argue that this isn't a good idea, and it literally just popped in my head, so it might not be one. You have to decide for yourself. But when you get about halfway there, when you're 6 months down the line or 4 months down the line or whatever, start building your brand publicly. I always mention Facebook groups, and for a lawn care company, that's perfect. It's a pretty non-intrusive way. I guess you could even call it opt-in for the most part. People are choosing to be in a buy-sell trade group, so they can expect for people to be posting their, whether it's services or their junk from their garage. But start doing what you can to build that brand, especially if you're in a place where there's seasons where you're in winter. Let people know, hey, when summer comes around, I've got this deal. And actually, this is kind of off on a different path, but if this person hears this advice, they can do something like this. I'm in a bunch of buy, sell, trade Facebook groups, and I saw a gal that posted a cleaning company, and she was actually doing some kind of promotion. It was, win a free cleaning. And I thought she was a little, I don't know the word for it, maybe adventurous, or I don't know. She was shooting a little high for her result. But what she was looking for was, if you get 15 people to like my page, you'll get a free cleaning. Do that on a, well, and again, I always kind of fall back on this. You'll have to decide if this is worth it to you and what number actually makes sense in terms of growing your audience, and how many, if more than one, free lawn care sessions, whatever you'd call that, you can afford to do. But little things like that, just doing what you can to grow your business, letting people and you're actually in a pretty unique field in that you can cover up that, if you're in the situation where, I physically can't work until summer because I'm in school or whatever it is, you don't have to let people know that. You can advertise without telling people, I'm a business that doesn't exist yet. You can kind of fall back on the, it's winter, we physically can't cut your lawn right now. Lots of things to consider. But that's my advice. If I wanted to pretend like I had any idea what I was talking about, or if I wanted to actually give off a list, if it were my business, I would start now. I would figure out the name. This is more of an itemized list, I guess. Start now. Come up with a name for the business. Register the business. Create a website. I think that's important, especially if search engine optimization is an option for you. I say that like it's paid. Even if it's not, create a website. An aged website will rank better than a brand new website. So give it as much time as you can to sit on Google. If you have to, put up a big notice on the website if you think you'll actually be found, that says, we will be picking up work in summer 2016, whatever it is. The likelihood of somebody stumbling across that website with that banner now and remembering to call you then is slim. But having that website rank for when you open it up in the future would definitely be worth it. Make sure all your equipment's in order. I don't know. I found that I'll start things, and I'll give a really weird example. Like moving into a house, I'll do things and not know that I should have expected these things. That's kind of why I suggest doing things way ahead of time. You move into your very first house, and you can kind of sit back and think, from past experience from living in an apartment or whatever, you can say, I've got gas, electricity, water, I've got these bills, got to pay rent, things like that, food, so on and so forth. Well, when I eventually moved into my very first house, a lot of things hit me real hard. You had to pay renter's insurance, which is something I should have done in the apartment, actually. Trash pickup, that's a fairly pricey, I guess, when you compare it to getting it for free, or I think if you look on your apartment, whatever it's called, your monthly expenses, the trash pickup is something like $10, and it's something like $100 a quarter. Not that matters at all, but lots and lots of different things. I didn't consider that I needed a lawnmower, which sounds silly. all sorts of little things like that. I could go on and on. Paying, just the big change was, you're kind of responsible for everything. Your landlord takes some of the responsibility, but it's my point. I digress. I got on a big tangent, but there's lots of things that you won't probably consider until you finally get into it. All the gas you might be factoring your expenses and forget to factor in replacement equipment, things like that. So I guess my original point, I even have it written down here, was have extra equipment if that's applicable to you. If you can have an extra weed eater, bring 2 weed eaters with you. I feel like that's something to consider. Extra gas, if you got to go buy gas cans, start doing that now. You've got 10 months or whatever it is to do that. If you can get another mower, things like that. If you can have replacement parts, and a replacement mower wheel, I feel like that would be beneficial to you. I feel silly, and I probably sound silly because I'm trying to talk about landscaping like I have any idea what I'm talking about, and in reality, I don't. But my overall advice, and I think it kind of encompasses everything I've rambled about, is to start now. Start plan, not even just planning. Start executing now. Even if it's just coming up with the name and paying somebody to design a quick website for you, or making one yourself, or whatever it is, just get started now. Here's another question that somebody asked. It says, do you think it's a good idea to relaunch my business? I'd started my online service business today, but I'm ashamed to say my execution was terrible. I was understaffed, they were undertrained, and everything was a mess. I had disappointed 2 customers and apologized to them immediately. I've been promoting my business for a month before I launched it. I was thinking to tell all my... Sorry, it's worded strange. I was thinking I would tell all my users about the problems my business had, apologize to them, and relaunch in a month when I know I have everything in order first. I'm scared that people won't give it another try, though. Do you think this is a good idea? I know my business idea is good, even though I'm sure a lot of business owners think their ideas are good. I think I just executed everything sloppily, so my business idea never really got the fair shot. What do you think I should do? This is kind of a hard question to answer because I can't tell exactly what your business was, if it was just a website, things like that. So I'll generalize a whole lot here and make a lot of assumptions, and I apologize if this doesn't apply to you, but hopefully you can get some value from it. My quick answer is, yeah, relaunch your business. That's, no problem in that. I've rebranded and redesigned my projects dozens of times, whenever I felt it was applicable. My concern, or my what I would suggest you not doing, you mentioned here, is relaunch it in a month. It kind of made it sound like you would close doors or whatever. I assume you're an online site, because it said I don't know. That was a strange question because I started my business today and I've already disappointed these people and so on and so forth. I wouldn't suggest shutting down and just kind of being pending for a month. I wish I had some more information because I could suggest things like work on your rebranding while you do it. Maybe you handle the workload if you can, if you're physically able. I assume you're more well trained than your employees. If that's not an option, it's hard to say. I wish I had a website to look at to give better advice, but apologize to your past clients that you've done wrong. If you can, if it's possible, try to do something to make it right. Give them a coupon or whatever it is that applies to your business. Being that you're so new, I probably wouldn't suggest making a public apology or things like that, or posting it on the front page of your website. It's probably not necessary. You word this like you're concerned. You word this from the perspective of somebody that just launched a Facebook, hundreds of thousands of users, and just disappointed this mass group of people. You mentioned that you're scared people won't give it another try. I would assume, it's hard to say. Maybe you're some kind of subscription service or something like that. But pushing all that aside, there's millions of people that would be willing to try your product or service if you can get it in front of them. I wouldn't focus so much on the few people that have probably come across your website and may or may not be put off. Just know that there's a near infinite number of people that are also an option, prospective clients or customers or whatever they might be. So don't worry yourself too much about the people in the past. But yeah, it's never a bad idea to kind of rethink things and rework it, and that's how most of us learn, is learning from experience and making mistakes. And we just kind of hope that the mistakes we made aren't deal breakers. And it sounds like, because you're considering this in the first place, it sounds like whatever you've done wrong wasn't a total deal breaker, sloppy execution, whatever. I think we're all guilty of that to a certain extent, kind of like what I was just talking about. There's lots of things we don't consider until we're already waist deep in it, and there's no going back. So hopefully, hopefully you can redeem yourself, I guess is the right word. Go ahead and kind of rethink things, restructure, train your staff, whatever you have to do. Try not to close your doors. I feel like that's never a good idea. It's bad enough that you've upset several clients and you're working to correct that, but to kind of close your doors, it's going to be an even more shaky track record, as opposed to just doing wrong and correcting the issues and being good from there. If you close your doors, if you launch, you upset a bunch of clients, and you immediately close shop, that doesn't look good to anybody. And kind of like I was saying, there's a decent chance no one will ever know what ever happened, unless somebody's going around leaving scathing reviews about your product or service. It's not something you should really concern yourself with. I know it's easy to get wrapped up in things like that, but do what you can to kind of ignore it and know that what's done is done, and you can only do better from here on out. How can I go about expanding my parents' business? Hey guys, I was wondering how I can go about doing this. I'm 23 years old, who's hoping to pursue an MBA within the next couple of years. My parents have their own janitorial business in Toronto, Canada, where they've been employed under one organization, a community center / church / school. They've had this business for 15 years and make around $100,000 annually before tax. I've always told them that once they retire that I want to take over their business and not have them give it up entirely. Their current business model isn't exactly the greatest, in my opinion. My parents both go to work and hire one employee and work a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. job Monday to Sunday with no breaks in between. I've pitched the idea of bringing on board employees, however they are reluctant over the past years because it's less money in their pockets. I've been wondering how I can go about expanding my parents' business, methods where I can bring them into different organizations, big or small, and continue expanding. They have a very good reputation with those they are employed with. What steps, measures, research, legal issues would I have to look into to make this happen? I understand this is a gradual process, however, it is something I've been thinking about for a while now. I've heard lots of situations like yours in the past, actually. And it's, I don't know, you're probably going to be disappointed with this answer. But first, I guess my question is, are you actually involved or not? You made it word, you kind of worded it like you hope that it'll be handed on to you when they're older, or whatever the case, whatever occurs. And it makes it sound like you're not directly involved as it is now. And that kind of goes along with my original point was that it's almost impossible for situations like this, especially if you've already mentioned it, to kind of change people's ways. People kind of getting grooves like a record, and they follow the same path day in and day out, and for years and years and years, and it's really hard to break them of that. And lots of times they're not interested. I've encountered that so many times myself when you can make somebody an offer. I'll give a really extreme example. And this didn't actually occur, but something along these lines. You might have a homeless friend who literally sleeps in the park, and you could say, "Hey, man, I've got a I've got a nice warm bed here. You can live here. I want a roommate. It's not temporary. You don't have to pay any bills until you get a job, whatever, no problem. And and for whatever reason, they'll turn you down. That was a really strange example, but it's kind of along those lines. You can make somebody a great offer where literally anyone else in the world would look at that and say, "Wow, that's a really generous, amazing offer. I should really take you up on that." And they'll dismiss it as whatever, just not being something they're interested in. Which maybe people are, I've kind of had internal battles about that, and just kind of wondered, why do people do things like that? And maybe you mentioned 100,000 before tax. Maybe they're just content with that, being able to bring home X amount each, or X amount total. That's a sizable chunk of change, I guess, depending on where you live. But I definitely feel your pain. If you're actually a really business savvy guy and you've considered all the logistics and things like that, it's easy to look at a situation and say, oh, well, why don't you scale? If you make this much now, why don't you do twice that and earn twice the amount of money, whatever it is. It's easy to look at it like that. But if you're actually involved to the point where you can see, it's definitely feasible to hire this person. These people are available to work. They only have to work for X amount legally, so on and so forth. It can be incredibly frustrating to know that it's just inches away to expanding that business. I really don't have a good suggestion for you. My advice would be work with them and get it to the point where you're kind of guaranteed that business when they're too old to work, and then expand it yourself. Kind of like I was talking about earlier, you'll have lots and lots of time to plan for that. And that kind of sucks. That's kind of sucky advice, but I think that's the best case scenario. They've kind of made it clear, it sounds like, that they're just not interested in doing that, not interested in expanding. And I feel like this is a situation where even if you approach them and said, look, this is your big account, this community center, church, school, whatever it is, this one account, you guys work there. Let me get other accounts and hire people to work on just those other accounts. Not a penny taken out of your pocket from that 100,000 before tax, whatever. I feel like if you presented that to them, they'd still say no. Maybe they don't want the headache. Maybe they're really content with the money they make. Maybe a combination of all of that. You and I might just be wired differently in that we're constantly looking to expand. Why make 100,000 when I can make 200,000? To be honest, if it were me and I had that one account with that 100,000, I'd take a step, I guess, in their eyes, in the wrong direction. I would hire somebody, one or two people to handle that community center and church and school, and take home 30,000, whatever it might be. However the math works out. At that point, you really can just focus on expanding, just rinse and repeat. But it's if they're kind of set in their ways, there's no point in, I don't know, you're barking up the wrong tree, I guess. They're not wanting to hear it, and there's not likely anything that'll change their mind. So if it's a situation where you can persuade them, or you're getting the business when they're no longer interested in it, it's just something to think about and plan for when the time comes. At that point, you can, whether you actually go and handle that $100,000 client, or you hire somebody to do it and you take home 30,000 or 60,000 or whatever it is, that's the point when you can really focus on expanding. Take that and say, we've had 20 years or whatever it amounts to. You said 15 years in your post. We've had 20 years of experience and 20 years of happy clients, and so on and so forth. You've got quite the history. It shouldn't be that challenging to get newer, similar clients. So sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear, but I think that's the most realistic. I guess I'll actually answer your question like you were looking for. Sit them down and explain what I just explained. You guys keep your $100,000 client. You guys keep going to work from whatever time you said, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and all that money remains yours. But let me focus on call it client relations or whatever. You go and find somebody that would be interested in working for you, or maybe you yourself get well trained. So there's no kind of gap, and it's called counting your chickens before they hatch or something like that. So you don't get a new client without a worker, or get a worker without a client or a project for them to handle. Get trained yourself and tell them, look, I want to get another client, and I want to handle that client entirely myself. And that would be a good way to kind of gauge their mindset. If they tell you no, either, I don't know, maybe it's you personally, and that sounds really rough. Maybe they don't, trust you to do the work or whatever it is, or they're just kind of set in their ways. If another option, and this may or may not be a good one, is start your own business. That you're obviously pretty familiar with the janitorial scene. You've got two great mentors if they're willing, and they shouldn't mind. They're actively giving up expanding. They're actively giving up, I guess it's a silly way to put it, but territory, or an area that they can service. So kind of let them know, and maybe combine those. Let them know, like, hey, I know this business has the potential. Maybe even present them with a business plan. That could be a good thing. Let them know, hey, I know this potential is here. I've mentioned it to you guys multiple times that it's something I want to pursue, and you haven't been super receptive to it. So we can sit down and discuss it, or I can start a business. And don't word it in a way like it's competing or anything like that, but really let them know that the drive is there and that you're so confident in the ability. There shouldn't be any reason for them to say no, unless, like I said, they're just two older folk that are really set in their ways and don't want to deal with the hassle of hiring an employee and all the legality things that go along with it. They might just be content doing it themselves. So, hopefully out of the several suggestions I gave, you can find something that'll work for you. And I'd actually be interested in hearing more about it. Either some more details, how you've approached them in the past, or how it goes out or how it comes about in the future. Either way, good luck to you. And it sounds like whatever the choice, there's an option for you that will end well for you. The last question here is, how do I legitimize my work? PC repair. He says, I'm a certified technician, CompTIA A+, and I have been fixing computers for a very, very long time, and I'm quite skilled. I have a decent amount of clients right now, but all the pay is under the table. I've been asking for referrals as of lately, and I am getting some growth. My problem is that I do not have a storefront, and I want to legitimize and make some more money before I search one out. My other problem, I'm 23, but I look really young, so I have to dress really nicely for people to take me seriously. I'd like to portray myself as just working for a small company, not the owner. Can anyone give me any advice? Thanks so much. These are always tough questions to answer because I don't have the answer for them. It's my first advice is talk to a professional. Go talk to a small business legal professional or whatever it is. I don't know if a small business attorney or whatever is appropriate. Whoever you're actually supposed to talk to, seek them out. I'm sure that'd be a good question to post. Post on Reddit or small business or whatever, and ask, hey, I want to legitimize my business. What type of professional can handle everything or just about everything I'm trying to accomplish here? That'd be the first step. They'll be able to point in the right direction of where to register your business, what kind of taxes you have to pay, all that messy stuff. After that, you mentioned kind of needing a storefront. I've considered doing computer repair as well, and what I found is the happy medium. If you don't want people dropping things off at your house, which I wouldn't, that seems messy, is have a nice car, which might take some investment. Don't try to do this with a crummy car, especially if you're struggling with your appearance. Have a nice car, whether it's a van or whatever. Get a magnet decal and be a remote guy, a guy that I'll come to your house and do it there. It can be kind of a pain because I'm sure you know this, and anyone who's listening to this, if you've ever tried to, for example, just reinstall your operating system, it's a long process. It's easy, it's simple. toss the disc in the tray and let it do its thing. But once you boot it back up, you've got literally hours of updates. It can just be kind of a headache. So that's something I actually discussed this at length with a friend. Are you just supposed to kind of awkwardly sit there? Do you retreat to your car during this? Things like that. And I'm sure you can come up with some busy work things. Even, this sounds like a silly example, but while that's happening, quote unquote, detail their computer, their mouse, or their keyboard, little things like that. Just which could go a long way. It gives you something to do while this is installing, things like that. I'm not sure. You might even befriend somebody who does something like that and kind of ask them, how does that work? I've kind of gone off on a relevant tangent, but it's something to consider. But that would be my suggestion. That kind of middle ground is be willing to do remote work or offsite work or whatever you'd call it. We'll come to you. That also, it kind of works, especially if you've got a nice vehicle. It does work in your favor. Nobody, and I'll go back to that, what I was saying in a second. Nobody cares how you look. If you're clean and you're dressed well, nobody cares if you look like you're 10 years old. If it looks like you can perform your job, that's all that matters. I feel like that's probably more of a concern for you than it actually is for other people. Anyway, being able to go to other people's houses, we'll come to you. It eliminates that skepticism of, I have to give you my computer. I have to come back tomorrow to your house, whatever it is. And that actually, it kind of just spawned another idea. What you can do is, if you've got a professional enough looking vehicle, invest however much it costs. I don't know. I imagine $100 or something for a big giant magnet decal you can stick on the side of your car that says your business name, and offer to go pick up. If somebody's got a desktop computer and they needs Windows reinstalled, and it'll take 4 hours total, not 4 hours of constant work, but 10 minutes of work and then 3 hours and 50 minutes of watching the computer reboot. Tell them, we'll come pick up the computer for you. We'll, take it back and deliver it when it's completed. That might be like I said, a kind of happy medium. So that's what I'd suggest, and it'll kind of bridge that gap between when and if you have a storefront. You might find that doing it like that works well enough for you that it's not something that a storefront that is not something you need to concern yourself with. You might do well enough with the drop off, pick up, things like that. As far as you'd like to portray yourself as working for a small company, not the owner, I'm not sure where that comes from, and I don't know. I'm assuming a whole lot. It almost sounds like a red flag, like kind of I don't know. It's a strange thing to want. I can't see any downside of looking like you own the business, unless your concern is that you assume that somebody would want an older fella to own the business and not yourself. And like I said, that's probably 99% of the time something that concerns you, but not any of the people that actually matter, that are your customers or your clients. So I don't have any advice there. And I feel like any advice you'll get would be something like dress down, or I don't know. Just I don't let that be a concern. And with age, I've learned, I may or may not have talked about this in the past, but I also look very young. And the key to that is just owning it. If you're stumbling over your words and you're wearing baggy clothes and making you look like a little kid, then, take care of that. That's an issue in itself. But dress really well, learn how to present yourself well, speak with confidence, and nobody will think twice about it. And you might get compliments occasionally, or someone might try to crack a silly joke and say, "Oh, wow, you're very young." And in reality, you're probably getting compliments more than anything. I don't think that's a problem that you need to concern yourself with. The biggest thing is just talk to a legal professional. Pay him whatever you have to pay him. I promise you, it's worth it, especially just for the peace of mind, just knowing that, wow, this guy is handling every aspect, every legal aspect of my business, and I'm 100% legitimate now, and I can focus on the things that matter. Whatever that cost is initially, it goes a really long way. And from there, it's just, I don't know, you can look at it like it's uphill and that it'll always get better. It's downhill because it's smooth sailing, but it's an easy ride from there on. You just have to figure out how you're physically going to do the work. Like I said, you mentioned the storefront as a concern, but what I would suggest is doing the in-house work. Kind of bill yourself as we'll come to you, and I think that's appealing for a lot of people if they can just call you and you'll show up, as opposed to, you'd be surprised how far out of their way people are willing to go to be lazy, I guess, or to avoid something potentially complicated. I can't imagine the number of people that are avoiding getting their computer fixed because they don't know how to unhook it or hook it back up. And if it works for you, you can incorporate that in your pricing model. You can we'll charge X amount to come out to you, and X amount to hook everything back up or whatever it is. You'll have to cater it to what you do specifically, but I think you'll be all right. Just find a professional and go from there. So in an attempt to keep Weekly Collective more interactive, we've decided to issue a weekly challenge, something really small and quick that you can do that will hopefully help your business quite a bit in the long run. This week's challenge is to create some kind of, I don't know exactly how to word it, a legal document of some sort, whether it's create an invoice that really lays out what's expected of you, a terms of service, a privacy policy, something like that. Just something to kind of protect yourself in the future. It's easy to look over it and say, well, I haven't had any problems in the past, or, I'm not really in that type of work, whatever it is, however you justify it to yourself. In reality, it's 10 or 15 minutes worth of work if you do it yourself. There's like terms of service generators and things like that. But having something is better than nothing. I especially like the invoice thing. Redesign your invoice if you have one with an area that explains, have a box for what's expected, and then below that box put, anything mentioned here is to be fully fulfilled by the provider or, the business owner or whatever. Anything not mentioned does not fall under this scope of work, things like that. Just whatever's applicable to you, but come up with one legal document that'll protect you in the long run, and will hopefully save you a lot of headache, heartache, and hassle. It does look like that about does it for this episode of Weekly Collective. Again, it's episode 5. Thanks to everybody so much for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, anything, feel free to contact us. You can find us all over the web. It's youtube.com/weeklycollective, twitter.com/weeklycollect, facebook.com/weeklycollective. You can email us directly at weeklycollective@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you have any questions, like I've been answering the past few episodes. I'd love to answer questions for listeners directly. Whatever the case, thank you guys so much for listening. You're what makes this whole thing work, and I will talk to you all next week. Thanks.